Hey everyone, so today this video popped up on my feed, my YouTube suggested videos, and I thought it was a pretty interesting looking video, so I'm going to be reacting to it today. The title is The Evolution of Nvidia GeForce Graphics Cards. So my guess with this is that it's going to go through and show, oh my gosh, every single graphics card ever made. And it does look like there's Surfshark sponsor, so I might skip that.
This video is sponsored, and it's easy to overlook that computer graphics today are the best they've ever been. And it's easy to overlook the giant leaps that were taken to achieve the highest fidelity in games. To be able to run highly demanding titles, graphic cards also had to become very powerful and efficient. Today, we will take a deeper dive into the Nvidia GeForce history, from the first GeForce to ever be released into the consumer market to the latest and greatest ones. The first GeForce from Nvidia to be introduced is the GeForce 256.
Look at that connector. I don't even think my PC has that style of connector. Like transistor 17 million, 1999, architecture Celsius, processor size 220, GPU clock 120 megahertz. For 150, 32 megabytes. Okay. Die size, wow.
It was marketed as the world's first GPU, and it was launched in October of 1999. It's built on the 220 nanometer process, which is based on the Celsius architecture, which clocks speeds reaching 120 megahertz. This card comes equipped with 32 megabytes of single data rate memory, and started at $249 MSRP. Those are the first demos to showcase and demonstrate what the GeForce 256 was capable of.
I mean, realistically, it's not the worst graphics you could get, but they're pretty terrible. An AMD one is cool. That might be video soon than this AMD one. Those are, I mean, they're not bad graphics by means, but...
The second generation GeForce 2 GTS was launched in April of 2000. Built on a smaller 150 nanometer processing node and based on the same Celsius architecture, it's tuned to reach slightly faster clock speeds of 200 megahertz. It has the same 32 megabytes of video memory, but it's double data rate, which we've come to know as DDR. And the starting price for this was $349 MSRP. These demos showcase for the first time real-time lighting and per pixel lighting, while also at the same time using a significantly higher number of triangles.
That's cool. So this is when so it started upgrading graphics here, okay. So this is the what card? The just GeForce 2, okay.
Before we move on, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Surfshark.
Nope. I do not do GeForce 3. Let's go.
Move on. The GeForce 3 launched in February of 2001. In terms of horsepower, this was a giant leap forward. Built on the 150 nanometer process, which is based on the Kelvin architecture, it has more than double the number of transistors compared to its predecessor, and reaches clock speeds of up to 200 megahertz. The GeForce 3 has 64 megabytes of DDR memory and started at a hefty $499 MSRP.
That price point is so high, though.
The demo showcase shading effects that create realistic reflective textures and what was considered complex facial geometry.
Be nice.
You need more
friends.
This logo is cool. Oh, I like the logo. Oh, that's sick. I really like that. That's cool. The way it reflects.
The Nvidia GeForce 4 Ti 4600 launched a year later in February of 2002. It's built on the same 150 nanometer process node based on the Kelvin architecture, now reaching clock speeds of up to 300 megahertz. The card comes equipped with 128 megabytes of DDR video memory, and it retailed for $399 MSRP.
This looks like something out of Harry
These
Potter.
demos highlight the rendering of real-time volumetric fur, and for the first time, hardware-accelerated anti-aliasing.
This really looks like something out of Harry Potter, but That werewolf looks really good for the time. I didn't catch what year this was released in. 2003, maybe 2004. The fur didn't look bad. Really didn't. For that time frame, at least. I'm comparing it to like Xbox games, so stuff like Xbox, the original Xbox, PS2, GameCube games, stuff like that.
Next up on the list, we have the GeForce FX 5800 Ultra. It launched in March of 2003. It's built using the 130 nanometer process, which is based on the Rankine architecture. The card reaches clock speeds of up to 500 megahertz. The video memory remained the same at 128 megabytes, but it's now upgraded to GDDR2. The price started at $399 MSRP, and taking a look back at these demos, you can see how Nvidia was opting for a cinematic depth of field blur, which honestly looked very bad, but the other demos show lighting effects which were very good looking at the time.
That fire looks really good for a 2003 game. So that other card was even better then. That's cool.
Nvidia GeForce 6800 Ultra launched in April of 2004. It's built on the 130 nanometer process node, and based on the Curie architecture, it allowed Nvidia to crank up to 222 million transistors. This card had more cores than ever before,
What the heck? That's
each clocked at a
creepy.
lower 425 megahertz. However, that didn't stop it from being very capable. The video memory was upgraded to 256 megabytes GDDR3, and in terms of price, it started at $499 MSRP. The demo shown utilized GPU to run complex vertex and fragment shaders that could create effects that were not possible before.
That's cool. That looks really good for 2003 then. By the way, I know this video is longer than like a typical reaction.
The GeForce 7800 GTX, otherwise known as the GPU of PlayStation 3, launched in June of 2005. It was built using a newer 110 nanometer process, but based on the same Curie architecture. However, this GPU reaches slightly faster clock speeds at 430 megahertz. It also comes equipped with 256 or 512 megabytes of GDDR3 video memory and had a launch price of a hefty $599 MSRP.
Rocket Man, burning up the... Oh, man. No gamer should ever have to play on a system like this. Well, originally, you know, I was going to try out for the Tooth Fairy job.
Okay, buddy, you know why you put this clip in. Video creator, which is Nick Tech. Yep, you know why you put this in. You know exactly why you put this one in. Nah, but there it does.
The GeForce 8800 GTX launched in November of 2006. It was built using the 90 nanometer processing node, which is based on the Tesla architecture, which clocked speeds reaching 576 megahertz. The most notable changes was the increase in video memory to 768 megabytes GDDR3, and it retailed for the same of $599 MSRP.
That's so, like, that seems so high. But when you compare it to, like, current graphics cards, like, the what's the 4080, 4090 selling for, like, 1600? Like, almost 3 times the price? No, it's way more than 3 times the performance, but it's just insane to think about that. And this lighting looks really well, by the way, for the time frame at least. Nowadays,
in March of 2008, Nvidia launched the GeForce 9800 GTX, built on a smaller 65 nanometer node, which is based on the same Tesla architecture. It has slightly less 512 megabytes of GDDR3 video memory. The differences between this GPU and its predecessors were minor, except for the starting price that was cut down to $299.
50%.
But in June of that same year, Nvidia launched the GeForce GTX 280, taking full advantage of the 65 nanometer processing node, which was now based on the Tesla 2.0 architecture. This is the first card where Nvidia packed more than 1 billion transistors. It reached clock speeds of up to 602 megahertz and comes equipped with 1 gigabyte of GDDR3 video memory. The GTX 280 had a launch price of $649 MSRP.
Oh, he's dead. She's gonna kill him now.
The GeForce GTX 480 launched in March of 2010. It's built on the 40-nanometer process based on Fermi architecture, reaching clock speeds of up to 701 megahertz. This GPU is very iconic for the reason that it's known for being very hot. So hot, in fact, that it reached temperatures of up to 97 degrees Celsius.
That's not even that
Nonetheless,
same for nowadays,
the key features on this card were 1.5 gigabytes of GDDR5 video memory, and in terms of price, it started at $499 MSRP. In these demos, we can see tessellation for the first time, which could be used to create complex scenes and characters using a huge number of triangles.
Oh, he's dead.
A few months and lots of criticism later, Nvidia launched the GeForce GTX 580 in November of that same year. It was built on the same, but more refined 40-nanometer process, which is based on Fermi 2.0 architecture. This was considered a very minor upgrade too, with the same 1.5 gigabytes of GDDR5 video memory, slightly faster clock speeds at 772 megahertz.
Price is just lower.
The main difference was that this card ran a lot cooler compared to its predecessor. The price tag also remained the same at $499 MSRP.
Price. I guess I didn't look at the previous price point, so. That looks good though, I ain't gonna lie.
In March of 2012, Nvidia released the GeForce GTX 680. They definitely took notes from their previous launches, as this GPU is built on a newer 28-nanometer processing node and based on the Kepler's architecture. It was marketed as the most powerful and efficient GPU. With 1006 megahertz clock speeds, it came equipped with 2 gigabytes of GDDR5 and started at $499 MSRP. The demo that Nvidia showcased here highlights the incredible work they've done with Hairwork system.
His fines look better too.
The GTX 780 launched in May of 2013. It's built on the same 28-nanometer process and Kepler's architecture. This wasn't just a minor upgrade. The number of transistors was more than doubled compared to its predecessor, coming in at a whopping 7 billion. It has even more cores with boost clock speeds, reaching 902 megahertz. The video memory also saw a huge upgrade, having 2 variants available to choose from, 3 or 6 gigabytes of GDDR5, and a starting price of $649 MSRP. It's also the first GPU where the Nvidia PhysX made a debut, something that, till this day, still looks incredible.
Surface tension and viscous forces are modeled, and because the cereal pieces have a lower density than milk, they naturally rise to the surface due to buoyancy. In this smoke simulation, the underlying fluid is modeled as thousands of particles tracking velocity and vorticity. Using particles provides a sparse representation of the airflow and allows smoke to interact with the other particle-based objects.
GeForce GTX 980 launched in September of 2014.
980.
It's built on the same 28-nanometer process, but in a whole new architecture, which Nvidia called Maxwell 2.0. With better performance and better efficiency, This card reaches clock speeds of up to 1,216 megahertz. It comes equipped with 4 gigabytes of GDDR5 video memory and had a starting price of $549 MSRP. This Apollo landing demo was powered by Unreal Engine 4 and voxel global illumination, a new technology that allowed real-time global illumination without the need of baking, making the process of developing games much easier.
Unreal Engine has made game development so much easier for everyone. The reflections.
Now, what's probably my most favorite release of all time,
1080.
the GeForce GTX 1080. Launched in May of 2016, it's built on the 16-nanometer process and based on Nvidia's Pascal architecture. This GPU boasts clock speeds of up to 1,733 megahertz, and it had a performance uplift that was better than 2 GTX 980s in SLI.
The 1080 is faster than a 980 SLI.
It comes equipped with 8 gigabytes of GDDR5X video memory and had a starting price of
Okay, so if you guys don't know what that SLI is right here, this is the idea and concept of combining 2 graphics cards into one and dual powering graphics cards. So both of these 980s right here are being used simultaneously to draw one video, one output, one everything. So you get the performance of 2 980s, but it requires 2 6-pins, it looks like. So that is what SLI is. It's combining multiple graphics cards.
Then a 980 SLI.
It comes equipped with 8 gigabytes of GDDR5X video memory and had a starting price of $599 MSRP. This was a raw horsepower upgrade, and I couldn't find any demos that Nvidia released.
And that's
That
why they
game
look
looks
so
good.
realistic. The animation is fantastic. The amount of geometry is just enormous. High dynamic range. You would think you're looking at a photograph.
In September of 2018, Nvidia released the RTX 20 series graphic cards. Before we talk about the flagship, let's explain what RTX stands for. Those GPUs were capable of rendering real-time ray tracing, a technique that was never used before in games because of high computational cost. Movies like Pixar's Monsters University would take up to 29 hours to render a single frame.
Oh my
And now,
God.
thanks to the engineering team, AI upscaling technology, and powerful RT cores that were added to the RTX family, those graphics were possible to render at a stable 30 to 60 frames per second. The RTX 2080 was built using the 12-nanometer processing node, based on the Turing architecture, with clock speeds reaching 1,710 megahertz. The card came equipped with an even faster 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory and had a starting price of $699 MSRP. The demos shown here are all rendered in real time using a combination of rasterization techniques and ray tracing.
How did Star Wars somehow end up in this? Like,
Because the adoption rate of ray tracing in games was very slow, the Turing-based GPUs did not hit the sales target that Nvidia was hoping for. Some of the reasons might have been the increase in price tag or the lack of performance uplift in traditional rasterization games. The GTX 1080 Ti was overall just a better option. Well, that changed in September of 2020 when Nvidia announced the RTX 3080, blowing every previous GPU out of the water.
okay, so it's not every graphics card. It's just like the main ones. Because he only covered the 1080, the 2080, and now he's covering the 3080. So he didn't cover like a 1030, a 2060, a 3070, 3060. So yeah.
This monster was built using the 8-nanometer processing node, based on Ampere architecture, reaching clock speeds of up to 1,710 megahertz. With 10 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory, it has doubled the performance of the 2080 in ray tracing tasks, and had a starting price of $699
That's
MSRP.
ridiculous.
Of course, if it wasn't for the low amount of stock that made this a disastrous launch, the demo showcased here is called Marbles, and is entirely ray traced with Nvidia DLSS integrated.
This is a cool animation though. That's cool.
Lastly, in Q3 of 2022, Nvidia is expected to launch the RTX 40 series of
Which they have, at
GPUs.
least at this
Based on
point.
some leaks, we have a pretty clear of indication on what the specs of RTX 480 will be. It will be built using the 4 or 5 nanometer processing node, which will be based on the Lovelace architecture, reaching clock speeds of up to 2075 MHz. It will be packed with 8,704 cores. In terms of memory, the RTX 480 will come with 16 gigabytes of GDDR6X.
I think that
and
is
based
what it
on
came
those
with.
specs alone, we can expect a 75% performance uplift compared to its predecessor. Nvidia might price these GPUs a little bit higher, but in my
ended
opinion,
up being
I think it
about
will start at the
2
same price of
times.
$699 because of AMD's competitiveness. Nvidia GPUs have come a
They
long
wish it
way.
was that price.
Just to put it into perspective, here's a direct comparison between the first GeForce 2
Oh my, holy cow. VRAM, your graphic RAM. So if you were playing with a 256 GeForce 256, you would have 32 megabytes compared to 24 gigabytes. That is a ridiculous difference. Megahertz is ridiculous. Clock speeds are ridiculous. The die size, everything is just ridiculous compared to these two.
56 and the best GPU that Nvidia has to offer today, the RTX 3090 Ti. It's unbelievable how much things have improved, and I can't wait to see how those graphic cards will look 10 years from now. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget.
Wow, that was awesome. That was really interesting. Because some of those original graphics cards would never have like known like stats about them, like just because I don't know old graphics cards. Why do I need to know old graphics cards? But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you guys in the video tomorrow. But yeah, take it easy. Peace out, everyone.